Thank you for joining us once more on Give It a Name with Jennylyn, the show that you can choose to name simply by going to my website, giveitanametv.com, and writing to us and telling me what you think each segment can be called or should be called. Tonight, I am going to do my second segment on Feng Shui, and if you have seen the first one, then I'm sure you'll recognize my guest on my immediate left, which is Marsha Golando, and tonight she's joined by her husband Eric, who is a Feng Shui architect. And so tonight the focus of our show is how we can live sustainably and try to preserve our world. So welcome Marsha and Derek.
Thank you.
I'm so happy we have a chance to talk about how we can start improving the way we live so we can preserve our universe, especially the world that we live in. So, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here again. And I guess I'm going to start off with the first question that I have, and between you and Eric, you can let me know who wants to answer it. Is there a green movement going on, and what is it about?
Well, absolutely, there's a sustainable green movement which has been going on for a while already. So in the last several decades, there's a big concern about the environment. But however, the last 10 years or so, and there's the climate change, and there's a concern about the resources depletion, that the planet Earth is running out of resources. And the momentum is really picking up steam because more and more we realize that this planet Earth is not able to sustain us. And so instead of just about the environment, there's more to it. And
yes, I mean, there is more to it. Basically, to be truly on a much deeper sense of sustainability, the green movement has three pillars, what we call the 3 E's. And they are, first, the environment. Of course, we want to be very responsible stewards of our Earth and our planet. The second E is economy, and all that what we do need to be economically feasible so that we can move forward. And the last E is equity to society, or what we call social equity, that it involves fair wages for people, so that it involves people in the equation and not just the nature and the economy. And those, again, are the 3 pillars of the green movement.
Wow, that's a foundation right there.
Yes.
Like the bottom of my house.
Exactly.
Where I grew up, all the homes are mounted on stilts, so that's what made me make that comment. So I wanted to ask you, since you're Feng Shui experts, how is Feng Shui related to the sustainable green practices?
Well, Feng Shui is a very proactive system. It's timeless. It's an ancient wisdom which is all about the quality of life and how we live with health, vitality, prosperity, harmony, and everything that sustains our life, and even beyond that. So Feng Shui has always been around and being used, and the principle and philosophy behind is helping people to maximize the potential. And now with this sustainable movement going on, the proactive system, Feng Shui definitely can be integrated with the more modern technology and innovations.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, when we look at the weather patterns now, and it really makes you wonder, what have we been doing wrong that we can't even predict what the weather is going to be anymore? I mean, this is summer, and it certainly doesn't feel that way sometimes.
Well, exactly. There's all these climate changes that's affecting our normal pattern, and is affecting the well-being.
Well, so I guess we better all get serious and start taking this, more seriously. Can you give us some of the Feng Shui tips in living a sustainable green life?
on the Feng Shui side or on the technical side, what we have done in trying to work with the environment versus trying to just conquer it is on specific examples in landscaping.
Yes.
When we plant our plants in front of our house or in a cityscape, we try to use what's more native, or at least if not native, even if it's non-native, but it's adaptable to our own microclimate,
Right.
that are drought resistant. Therefore, you don't have to overwater it, and you don't have to use unnecessary resources to have it look just as nice as any other type of landscape. That is one specific example.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Feng Shui is all about conservation, it's about preservation, it's about, one essence of Feng Shui is about do no harm and do good. So in other words, it's to reduce doing harm to our environment, reduce waste, and then increase in how we can generate, for example, energy, the qi, in a natural way, instead of just burning the fossil fuel.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's actually many levels of looking at this sustainable movement. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
As you were speaking, I kept thinking, gosh, I mean, it's so enormous, the whole arena. It's you need to do several segments on it to really get to all the key areas that you need to start, probably changing some of what you do or becoming conscious of making your life, more Feng Shui conscious, so that you can start living in a way that will preserve the universe as well as keep your energy levels flowing as they should.
Yeah, exactly. What's so great about this movement is everybody can be involved. In fact, it should everyone from the grassroots level. You don't have to be knowledgeable. You don't have to be have a lot of money. All we do is just shift our way of thinking. And one big basic major change is instead of overconsumption, which I think all of us are guilty of, we can use less. There's this reduce and then reuse and recycle. There's a pattern that we can pick up, just reduce or change our habits.
Why do you think people weren't more Feng Shui conscious from the very beginning? Because a lot of what I've read in preparation for the interviews I've done on this subject really point to practices that should just be natural for us. Why is it now that people are suddenly realizing that we were doing things the wrong way, and why is it so difficult to change it and start becoming more conscious of protecting the environment, not wasting? What do you think is the cause of that?
Well, part of it initially is during times of great abundance, when everything, all resources seemed limitless.
Yeah.
There was no issue of that we would ever run out of oil for power, fresh water for our own needs, and we had that mentality of we could control the environment to our needs without regard of what happens to it.
Right.
That all resources were essentially limitless. We are now finding out that it definitely is not.
Right.
and so the movement of the green movement is towards where, yes, we learn from nature. It's been around for much longer than we have.
Yes.
It's learned to balance itself, and we need to learn to balance with nature, and that is the movement of this green movement.
Well,
Yeah. And I think it's more consciousness. It's just the awareness. And since we are actually experiencing the consequence of the impact, the damage.
Yes. Well, that leads me to an article I ran across as I was preparing for this interview, and I wanted to share what I read with you and see how you feel about this. It says, "There is nothing as unstoppable as an idea whose time has come. Can you imagine a time when architects' fees are based solely on how much life force their buildings can hold? And then it goes on, and since sustainable living can benefit the world if practiced globally, do you have any suggestions on what can be done to get other architects/designers to begin practicing these principles? Eric, I think I'll throw this one at you since you're the engineer.
Yes, well, being the engineer and being on the technical side,
Right.
it certainly starts with education and realization that we do not necessarily, in our intellect,
Yes.
hold all the answers to many of our issues that are coming straight at us in this modern era. And part of it, again, is that education of learning to live with, not just living with, but learning from
Right.
nature, studying the different, let's say, microclimates, how nature adapts, and we can adapt our own design, architecture, and to each type of let's say, like a microclimate or micro environment. And there's no one answer that will work for everywhere in the world. There's no one magic bullet,
Right.
and that's part of I think the education that needs to happen, and it has to turn in our mind first.
Isn't that funny how that works? As I've gotten older, I've looked at my life and I've realized that so much of what I do now is based on experiences that I've had. I know if I make certain choices, I know what the consequence is going to be. So now I'm a much wiser woman based on all the lessons that I had that weren't so great. And I think it's true of almost everything in our lives, because we're seeing the effects of the way we've been living and of the excess and not being conscious of, the ozone and all of these things. We are actually being forced to make changes. Don't you agree with me?
Yes, yes.
And so I was going to read part 2 of the same article that I was reading, and it says, biologic architecture is based around the new science that shows that all living things actually grow and thrive in an electric field, which is fractal or rose-like, created by materials which themselves were at one time part of biology. The science word for this fractal field, which causes DNA to grow better, is called phase conjugate dielectric, but it simply means waves conjure up. What do you think about this study, Eric?
Well, it's going back to what we've been discussing of taking a close look at what nature has been doing and has through evolutions of billions of years, where we learn from it and not just decide in our own intellect that we know better.
Right.
And that's part of
actually,
that.
we human beings could really learn from nature. There's a field that is called biomimicry, that we look at nature, we see how they adapt, and I think even solar panel, the photovoltaic, is learning the technology from the natural environment. So there's so much we can learn from the natural world that and is evolved and can be adapted. And we at this time of the human civilization, when everything is kind of in crisis, with limited resources, pollution, and climate change, and others, maybe we really can take some wisdom from nature and how we can survive.
Well, that's pretty much what this article says here too, and it says what Feng Shui called qi is now something science can recognize as an electric field, which dramatically affects all health and growth. In practice, this means we limit steel, aluminum, and synthetic materials, plus we make careful plans to place our living space on magnetic lines and fields that fit this rose-like and growth-giving pattern. These shapes and materials make life force precisely because of their rose-like and fractal internal and external geometry. The life-giving, uplifted feeling you get when you enter a classic sacred space almost never happens inside steel or aluminum, but does happen inside biologic material structures. Give us some examples, Eric, of how one can integrate biologic / Feng Shui architecture simply to a skeptical or a non-technical person to encourage sustainable green living. And the reason that I was fascinated with this article and brought it in as part of this interview, there's so many people who are locked into their way of doing things. And although sometimes life is changing and screaming at us that we need to change, these people are not willing to embrace anything new because they're not comfortable with it. What do you think needs to happen for everyone to start becoming more conscious of how important this is?
Well, in terms of some examples, the water that we just as a very basic, just the water that we talked about, we've had taken for granted where it comes from, the
Yes,
fresh water that
right,
we need,
right.
and with the current climate change, rain is falling where it hadn't fallen normally before, and it's drying up where it's normally fallen. So we really have to learn to try to utilize what nature gives us, and not just try to collect water from 500 miles away, and learn how to use it locally. So that is one example of how we learn to live. Again, going back, I keep going back to learning from nature and living with nature instead of just trying to control it and to force fit things because I live here, I want my water to come here.
Right.
And it doesn't. It's it's being shown now that it's not as simple as that anymore.
Right.
And actually, the example you gave from the article is about a favorable environment of the electromagnetic field. And from our work, actually, let me give you a specific example.
I was just going to ask you that. She's reading my mind.
That's called connection.
Yeah.
Which is very unfavorable is having our home or a subdivision which is built very close to the power towers and the power lines. Yes. Because all those EMF emitted from those very modern technology, it actually interfere with our normal flow. And from a Feng Shui point of view, it is very disadvantage or unfavorable to live close to all these power towers and power lines. So that's something that I pretty much caution everybody.
Should be conscious of.
Yeah, it should be conscious of because it's interfere with the EMF, which is the
EMF, electromagnetic field, which is what that article said.
I was just reading about here.
The force and the chi of all beings, of all nature.
Wow, people should really take this stuff seriously. Well, even before I knew anything about Feng Shui, I was buying a home one time, and that was a problem. The electrical wires were too close to the building, and so I loved it. I wanted it so badly, but didn't get it because of how close the proximity.
You can sense it.
You can sense the
I think the person, the realtor, told us that those wires was not a good idea to be so close to them. And then I researched why, and was glad we didn't buy it. Can you share some Feng Shui success stories with us?
I would think that Feng Shui, I've been involved with the Feng Shui work for over 20 years.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah, well, I grew up with it, and my late father was a Feng Shui builder in Hong Kong. So I guess it's just in my heritage, and to apply Feng Shui in buildings, Feng Shui works very well with green buildings. Green buildings is very organic, use natural lights, is very energy conscious.
Okay.
And it's very comfortable, clean air, clean water. Well, if sharing success stories, I would say people, I help builders, usually build subdivision.
Especially the ones sitting next to you.
Yes, we try to follow,
Yes.
And
apply the principles.
So, Eric, since you're an architect and you're a Feng Shui conscious architect, you probably work with other architects in your lifetime. If you're not now, I'm sure you have somewhere during the course of your career. Are they all Feng Shui conscious as you are? Are they all contributing to sustainable green living now? Is that a consciousness that exists within the community of architects that you know?
Yes, generally working with other architects, they may not think of it as Feng Shui, but in their mind, their good design of having more natural light, less artificial light,
Right.
and utilizing landforms to an advantage versus fighting it. Those principles, all the architects generally, the good architects are applying it already. They may not call it. They call it good architecture and good design and good engineering.
Right.
But it is Feng Shui, and they may not think of it, they may not call it, or they don't use that terminology as Feng Shui, but they definitely apply it. And they're conscious of utilizing what nature has.
Okay, so hold that question. I don't want to forget to ask him this really quickly. So if you see someone, an architect that you respect, designing a home or preparing a home to be constructed, and they're not working with those principles, would you say something to them?
Yes.
You would?
Yes, of course, I would.
Okay.
And it depends. Like with working between professionals of architects and engineers, structural engineers, designers, there are ways to bring up things without properly, let's put it this way, diplomatically, to say this orientation or that entrance is not quite favorable or suitable, let's move it, and you give reasons, and of course it can be worked out.
Okay. Well, Marsha, you wanted to say something just now.
Yeah, actually I can think of a couple of examples, and Eric can help me with this too. One is the T intersection homes with straight streets that's facing a house.
Yes.
And that is considered as a very bad Feng Shui location.
Okay.
And Eric, as an engineer, maybe you can explain.
Why?
Well, inevitably, with the T intersection from a Feng Shui point of view, the qi and the energy just go straight at you. And from a physical or practical point of view, that you could have a car who has lost its brakes and just goes straight down the road and runs into your living room, and so forth.
And I've known of a situation where that's happened.
And
it does happen.
So generally it won't happen if your house doesn't face the street.
Right.
So that's from the physical and the engineering point of view. Now the ways around it with using Feng Shui is to have some landscaping as a protection against something like that.
Okay.
And
and the design is you just have to design it in such a way that the street could curve a bit instead of a straight line.
Okay.
Or have the property, the building be a little bit off.
Okay.
So it's not so vulnerable or so visible.
Okay. And as always, when you're having fun, time just seems to fly. But there's so much more I want to find out and learn, and I want my viewers to hear. So one of them I'm going to ask you is, I've been hearing a lot about solar panels versus, electricity, so that people, all part of being sustainable and green. Tell us about that.
Well, solar panel, just briefly, is a very growing field.
Okay.
The more that it is used and applied in homes, small scale to large generating plants.
Okay.
The more is done, the lower the cost and the more affordable it is. So I think it is a step in the right direction, because the solar power, the sun is free.
Yeah.
It's there.
No one's not charging for it.
No one's charging for it. And in fact, just briefly, there was a cartoon of these guys in the desert looking down for energy, with a bright sun above them, and they're looking down, say there's got to be some source of energy down there.
Yes.
When all they have to do is to look up and look at the sun, and all the power you need.
Well, it's just like everything else in our life. We just take some things for granted.
Yes, you don't.
I mean, every time you wake up, if it's not a stormy day, the sun is out. Right?
Exactly, it's there.
Exactly.
So it is a growing field, and I think it will, with the cost going down, there'll be more and more applications, and that will definitely is a step in the right direction.
Okay. So over the last 5 years of your career, have you seen a lot of sustainable practices and principles being applied to architecture in the world today?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Not just here in the United States, but internationally. Many other countries are just as moving as quickly as we can, and some even much further. In Western Europe, in parts of Asia, specifically China, they are embracing sustainability because they realize that energy is not a limitless resource anymore, whether it's energy from water, from oil, from many things.
So I think it's good to know that it's a global
Yes.
effort, and think of how wonderful and how much better life will be if globally everybody becomes conscious and takes responsibility for making sure that we improve the way we live and to preserve the world. Because I mean, I'm older now, and God knows how much more time I've got, but I have kids, and they're going to have kids, and it's not just about me, it's about everyone else. And so I think it's really critical that we all take the responsibility to educate ourselves, first of all, on what sustainable green living means, and start to practice. So we're down to a minute, and so I'm going to ask each of you, what would you like the viewers to take away from this show today? Let's start with you, Marsha.
Well, as I mentioned, there's this global need for sustainability. So there's a wise saying that think globally and act locally. So it's each one of us, it is our responsibility to take part in this movement.
Thank you. And you,
Yes, on my part, building on what Marsha said, I just have a slogan that I like to use, that nobody can do everything, everyone can do something.
I like it.
Relative,
I love it.
relative to the green sustainability, if everybody does a little something, it works.
Thank you so much for joining us again. This is the second segment I've brought you on Feng Shui. I really hope that people are making changes. We want to have a healthy world. We want to have a better world. Let's all play our part in making it sustainable and green and enjoying a better life. Thank you. Thank you to my crew. Thank you to my guest. Thank you so much for watching me. Good night.